I appreciated what you said about the William Morris Gallery, and anybody who visits it will see it does a really great job of integrating Morris's artistic and political work in one framework. John.
Thanks. Sean and I had a quick chat on the phone a couple of days ago, deciding who was going to say what. We had a bit of a joke about each other. What we should do is just give out copies of John Bellamy's Marxism, Ecology, and that would explain everything a lot better than certainly I can go at. But things that Marx was importantly said was, philosophers interpret the world. The point, however, is to change it. So what I think is good about Marx is how it can help us in the current day struggles. So I'm going to try and fit in, how we can use Marx. It's really important that we recover Marx and highlight the fact that he was actually somebody that talked very much about nature and human beings' relationship to nature. Anyway, the Queen's speech earlier this week, Cameron's condemned government announced that they were going to change the law, change the trespass law on fracking. They were going to let companies drill underneath private land. So they, that's going to, for me, what's wrong with fracking is it's bad in itself in all the chemicals that are used, but it's another fossil fuel that's going to be burned and it's going to send carbon dioxide up into the atmosphere. So that thing in the Queen's speech is going to lead to more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And the other thing they talked about was zero carbon homes. They're going to reduce the impact of previous things that they've pledged about building. So they've removed the thing that they said that builders have to comply with zero carbon homes from 2016 onwards. That's abandoned. They're going to be able to do other stuff like carbon offsets and things like that, instead of actually building proper houses that are zero carbon. So at the same time as they're doing that, we've seen scientists, haven't we, the IPCC, the scientists from the United Nations saying that if we keep on burning gas, fossil fuels as we're doing, it's going to send the temperature of the planet increasingly higher and higher, and warning basically governments and everybody that this is happening, and it's happening even faster every year. And yet the government's talking about burning more and more every year. Are they completely mad, or what's that about? So if they do know about it, Blair, more than 10 years ago, said that climate change is the most important thing facing humanity this century. And then a bit later, after him, Gordon Brown said, didn't he, Copenhagen is our last chance to get international emissions down. That's 5 years ago. So he was talking about an urgent need to get the emissions down, and he's right about the timing. But let's hope he's not right. He's right about the urgency, but let's hope he's not right about that being the last chance, because it didn't reach any agreement. And why it's important is scientists have also pointed out, haven't they, that there are these tipping points, the albedo effect in the Arctic, the melting of tundra in the northern parts of the world, which is recently saying the ocean acidification, which means that there's less and less of a buffer as time goes on, and the ocean acidifies, apart from other problems within the ocean, like shellfish. If the acidification reaches a certain concentration, living shellfish will have their shells dissolved if it goes up. So that's not climate, that's something additional. And what's happening? They're digging miles beneath the surface of the Mexican Gulf, 7 miles down to get oil. They're going to the Arctic to dig that pristine environment up to get more oil. They're fracking under the stockbroker belt in Surrey. They're getting dirty tar sands from anywhere they can. So why is that happening? Are they just completely bonkers, or what? Surely a rational government should be saying, let's stop burning fossil fuel, let's start building renewable energy, let's insulate all buildings. But no, they're not doing that. And the reason is because capitalism has always treated the world as a dustbin. It's saying, coming to what sort of Marx said about it, that capitalism considers, and other economists back in Marx's day actually, I think, said that capitalists considered the environment to be a free resource to them. It's a free gift. So that explains why the House of Lords and the new infrastructure bill they're pushing through allows them to frack underneath the ground which is previously private. You know, they're considering that to be a free gift to us, and regardless of kind of what it does to the environment. The other thing they consider to be a free gift is the unpaid labour of workers. And Marx talked about the value being created not just by human labour, but relationship with nature. And he had this concept of the human earth metabolism, whereby he considered the human beings and the planet as an integral whole, and there was a relationship there, so that the food that you got from the soil would return to the soil. The first thing that capitalism kind of started to change that, so that sets up a sort of cycle which is sustainable if the food goes back to the soil. But capitalism at one point took along many centuries, epitomised by the enclosures, drove people off the land. It happened centuries before, but that's some of the things that people know about. I think the Duchess of Sutherland was another example that Marx points out. He said that she replaced 15,000 human beings with 750,000 sheep. So they pushed the human beings off the land. And there's a bit in here about it. So he says in volume 1 of Capital, capitalist production, by collecting the population in great centres and causing an ever-increasing preponderance of town population, on the one hand concentrates the historic motive power of society, on the other hand it disturbs the circulation of matter between man and the soil, by it prevents the return to the soil of its elements consumed by man in the form of food and clothing. It therefore violates the conditions necessary to lasting fertility of the soil. So, I just lost my place for the other one. The other quote was going to talk about the initial start of the whole process was driving people off the land, and thereby creating that rift that Sean talked about between human beings and the environment. And that's something that continues to this day. I had from the Independent yesterday, it showed a Chinese company in Africa, in Sudan, which produces 95% of its economies from oil, and how they, in other parts of, anyway, in Africa, people are being driven off the land even to this day. That's happening. That pillage that started, Marx pointed out the classic type of it in England in the 14th century still continues. People are still being driven off the land for a profit. And so the problem with capitalism isn't it? It's not production for need, it's production for profit. So they do the two things. They drive workers off the land, and they have to then get a job somewhere to live. Capitalists employ them, they exploit them. So they've driven them off the land. So there's two things. They get the free gift of nature, and they get the free gift of unpaid labour, which actually I think also includes not just unpaid exploited labour, but includes unpaid labour in the house and everywhere else. And that's something we need to bring that in a bit more. So I think that capitalism has already failed in its task of solving the climate problem, in that people are already losing their lives and their livelihoods. And why can't capitalism solve it? Because they think there's too much to lose for them. They've got a huge infrastructure invested in oil and gas and the rest of it, which they don't want to lose, and therefore they see renewable energy as a threat to that. and that's backed up by government. So on the radio the other day, you had the DEC minister talking to one of the BBC journalists and saying, we're going to finish all subsidies for onshore wind. So not only are they increasing fracking, they're cutting back the onshore wind. So I'm told to round up, I'm not even halfway through yet, so. Okay, what's our response? I think we need to restore the basic human earth metabolism. That means an ecological revolution according to John Bellamy Foster, but it also means, according to him as well, a social revolution because of the way capitalism is the system that we've got at the moment. We need a different system. We can't change capitalism to make it nicer. We have to get rid of it, and let's build a new kind of world based on that. And what are our demands? The state should finance a building of renewable energy systems, insulating. And quite a lot of the demands that I think we should have are in this document that's produced by the 1 Million Climate Jobs campaign against climate change trade union group. There's another one. This is the few of the last edition. There's another edition coming out in September to coincide with the People's March for the Climate that's happening on 20th of September. We need the fossil fuels in the ground, and we have to plan, we have to use the fossil fuel that we've got. That fifth of the fossil fuel that's remaining that Michaela talked about, we must use that to build wind turbines, because try building a wind turbine with a horsepower, you can't do it. We have to use the energy that we've got now to build a replacement energy system. Why? Because, and I think we should use their way of doing it, it's the right thing to do. They always do that, don't they? If there's something that they don't like, that they think you might not like, they say, oh, it's the right thing to do. Tony Blair said invading Iraq was the right thing to do. We should say the right thing to do is to build 6 wind turbines, 10 megawatt wind turbines a day for the next 20 years, because that's the scale of it in the UK. Other technologies would do, but you can work out how much energy we need, and it can be done with renewables. I think we need to extend the grids so it's a more widely dispersed grid, and we need energy storage as well, that's what I think. And one of the things they talk about is the expense of the green energy, isn't it? But actually, green energy will be much cheaper than fossil fuel energy, and that's really why they don't like it, because it will bring the price down. As soon as you install wind turbines, say in the North Sea, and there's enough well, it even starts straight away. In Germany, last month or the month before, the price of electricity dropped to zero temporarily, because why? There was a very, very windy period, and there was and it was sunny, and the demand had dropped. So I'll just read out one quote from here at the end then, that Marx said, you know, about a future sort of society that what would it be like to looking back at this society. From the standpoint of a higher socio-economic formation, the private property of particular individuals in the earth will appear just as absurd as the private property of one man in other men. Even an entire society, a nation, or all simultaneously existing societies taken together are not owners of the earth. They are simply its possessors, its beneficiaries, and have to bequeath it in an improved state to succeeding generations, as Bernie Patrick is familiar as good heads of the household. So we need to change it, and change it soon.
Thank you. Two very interesting speeches that obviously could have gone on a lot longer, and we've learned a lot more from them, but there's a lot to see. We've only got just over half an hour for the discussion, which means people will have to be brief, and I'm going to start cutting people off at 3 minutes. So we'll go around there.
We had a very good discussion in Waltham Forest Left Unity on Thursday night on precisely this question, which comrades from RS21 also came to. And the question of how are you going to be able to sell people, you know, austerity and not having flat screen televisions and all that kind of stuff. And I think, you know, the hostility of the state, or the states, to the green movement, to environmentalist movements, isn't just about a direct action. It's about the fact that the ecological critique goes to the heart. It's a dagger pointing at the heart of consumer capitalism, because it points to a whole different way of producing, consuming and living.